Chief of Ottawa Police Steve Bell and Ontario Provincial Police Thomas Carrique deliver opening statements to the Emergency Act Invocation Committee. They describe what they encountered during the Ottawa protests of the truckers' convoy. Here's the clip.
Distinguished members of the committee, I'm pleased to be given this opportunity to meet with you today. Joining me today is Deputy Chief Trish Ferguson, who is the operational lead for the successful resolution of the illegal protest. We're here today to answer questions about the illegal protest that occurred in Ottawa between January 28th, 2022 and February 20th, 2022. As the police service of jurisdiction in the nation's capital, our members are well practiced in keeping the peace during demonstrations. Every year, hundreds of protests occur in our capital. Our officers are trained to maintain the safety of both demonstrators and the public at large. The vast majority of these protests are peaceful and lawful, and protesters return home when their point has been made. This unlawful protest was unprecedented. The protesters brought thousands of vehicles to our city with the full intention of disrupting our capital. After they arrived, many chose to stay and were clear in their words and actions that they meant to do damage to our community. Our police service received regular reports of intimidating and threatening behavior towards residents on a daily basis. We had reports of hate crimes being committed and willful disregard of police and court orders. The protesters used their vehicles as a tool to back up their behavior, honking their horns and racing dangerously around the streets of the downtown core. Despite our attempts to negotiate, threats of investigation and enforcement, the illegal and disruptive behaviors continued throughout the protest and became elevated on weekends when more protesters would arrive. Our response as a police service, along with our many partners, was to work to safely manage the disruptions, contain the behaviors, and negotiate the protesters out. In the early days, we were able to ensure that no serious injuries, death, or damage to infrastructure was committed. But that's not the standard of policing any resident of our city or any Canadian would expect. As a police service, we understood quickly that we needed assistance from all levels of government in the form of legislative powers and policing resources if we were to safely remove this unlawful protest from our streets. It's important that this committee understand and appreciate the negative impacts this behavior had on our entire community, our businesses, and especially the impacts on our vulnerable, marginalized, Indigenous, 2S LGBTQAA+, and racialized communities. Our center town is a diverse, proud, and vibrant place. But during the protests, we saw clear signs of hate, like swastikas, anti-government sentiment, and leaders posting threatening language on social media and other various forms of social disorder. It shook our community's faith and confidence in the ability of police and government to keep them safe. We've seen the same effect in cities like Calgary, Windsor, and Coutts, Alberta, where similar protests were being held. Our goal from the outset was always to remove this protest safely. In order to do that, it required the careful coordination between all of our policing partners to develop a strategy that would ensure a safe resolution. All three levels of government responded with legislative measures that aided our strategy. I want to thank the City of Ottawa and the Ontario government for the changes it brought forward. And I also want to thank the federal government for invoking the Federal Emergencies Act. From a policing perspective, the legislation provided the OPS the ability to prevent people from participating in this unlawful protest, restrict people from traveling to any area where the unlawful protest was taking place, secure protected places and critical infrastructure, create and maintain the secure area to prevent people from violating the act and safely remove people who were attempting to do so, go after the money funding the protest, and require third parties to assist us in removing the heavy vehicles that were clogging our streets and creating a safety hazard. It was a critical piece in our efforts, but it was only one piece. Another critical piece was the rallying of police resources from the RCMP and the OPP and police services from across Canada. I want to thank them all for their support. As you saw, once we had all of those authorities and those resources in place, we were able to implement a methodical police operation between February 17th and February 20th with an integrated command led by the Ottawa Police Service, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and the Ontario Provincial Police to safely remove the protest. In total, there were 230 arrests, 118 people criminally charged with more than 400 criminal counts. Hundreds of provincial offense notices were issued. There are cases that are still moving through the courts and multiple investigations are ongoing. There is no doubt in a democracy such as Canada that a discussion and assessment on the appropriateness of the invocation of the Emergencies Act that provided police broader powers is important. I am pleased to be here to contribute to that discussion. I could tell you that police chiefs across the country are watching this discussion because they know that similar situations could or are occurring in their jurisdictions. I've spoken to many of them who have sought out advice. Finally, I want to reiterate my pride in all of the police members who worked on this operation, including the members who came from across Canada to assist us. This was truly a Canadian effort, and it showed the vital role police play in maintaining our democracy and keeping our residents safe. Deputy Chief Ferguson and I look forward to answering your questions today.
Thank you very much, Interim Chief. Now I would like to call on Commissioner Thomas Carrique. Sir, you have 5 minutes for an opening statement. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chairs, committee members. I'm joined here today by Ontario Provincial Police Deputy Commissioner Chris Harkins and Chief Superintendent Carson Pardee. Under the Ontario Police Services Act, the OPP has a unique dual mandate, providing frontline policing services to 328 municipalities across the province, as well as providing assistance and/or specialized support to municipal services upon request. As it relates to the Freedom Convoy and the associated illegal blockades in the City of Ottawa, the OPP's Intelligence Bureau commenced reporting to our policing partners on January the 13th, 2022. As of January 22nd, daily intelligence reports focused on the convoy headed to Ottawa and the anticipated protest movements across the province. The intelligence reporting was shared with more than 35 Canadian police, law enforcement, and security agencies. As the convoy crossed over the Manitoba-Ontario border and traveled across the province until it arrived in Ottawa on January 28th, OPP officers professionally fulfilled their duties without incident. In support of the Ottawa Police Service throughout the occupation, an increasing number of OPP officers and specialized resources from various services became engaged, ultimately contributing to an integrated plan and the establishment of a unified command. Simultaneously, as members responded to many other convoys and demonstrations that consistently and repeatedly emerged in communities across Ontario, including but not limited to the critical blockade of the Ambassador Bridge, the blockade of Highway 402, multiple other attempts to block Canada-US land border crossings, and demonstrations that posed a risk to the area of the Ontario legislature. In addition, from day one, when the convoy entered Ontario, we were responsive to requests from assistance from other municipal police services. This was a provincial and national emergency that garnered international attention. In response, the OPP and more than 20 other police services from across the country worked collaboratively to address public order emergencies that were unmatched in recent history. Protests and demonstrations are often complex in nature. The role of the police remains that of protecting the public, upholding the law, and keeping the peace. The province's critical infrastructure and highways regulation under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act and the Federal Emergencies Act were effective supplementary tools needed to help protect critical infrastructure and ensure the continuous and safe delivery of essential goods and services, while at the same time maintaining, or in the case of Ottawa, restoring peace, order, and public security. As the committee is well aware, in addition to the critical events experienced in Ontario, the illegal occupation in Ottawa was accompanied by numerous other high-risk Freedom Convoy-related protests and blockades across Canada. The OPP worked collaboratively with the Ottawa Police Service, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and other policing partners to develop a sustainable, integrated operational plan that was informed by best practices from other high-risk critical events, available police resources, along with other concurrent and emerging operational requirements in a number of police jurisdictions. Sufficiently trained public order officers were amassed from throughout Canada and deployed in an integrated, strategic, and measured manner, which resulted in the collapse of the occupation. This situation and the associated events simultaneously taking place across Canada required unprecedented national collaboration to prevent injury, preserve life, and protect critical infrastructure. As the Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police, I'm extremely proud of the remarkable professionalism and dedication of the officers deployed to Ottawa and the other high-risk events simultaneously occurring across the province. Despite all the challenges, while the entire nation watched live, our officers and those from a multitude of other Canadian police services remained committed to their roles and responsibilities and represented the entire policing profession with the utmost professionalism, discipline, and competence. Thank you, merci, make wedge. I look forward to answering any questions you may have of the Ontario Provincial Police.